Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about season 3 of Star Trek Picard. And I know that a lot of people really like this season. But after watching the 10 episodes that I saw, my feeling after this matches the weather outside, which is extremely overcast and pouring torrential rain. I am not happy. In fact, I think you could classify me as angry. Because there are two scenes that I want to use to illustrate my point here and to really clarify what I'm talking about. Because the first two seasons of this show should never have existed. The first two seasons of the show were a complete and total waste of time. They were terrible. They are unforgivably garbage. There is no reason that those seasons should exist. There is no reason that this should be season 3. And I'll explain. What needs to happen here is a lesson needs to be established in stone so that even the idiots in Hollywood that don't get it can get it. So, let me just say real quick. I want to show these two clips, and I want to really illustrate my point. So, first of all, this is what should have been season 1 of Star Trek Picard. That there is a threat that has emerged, and it's revealed that Geordi has been working in his free time to rebuild the Enterprise D, and so they get to go on one last mission. But it's not just that. But let's watch this particular clip.
Computer, lights?
This should have been season 1, episode 3. So everyone's, sort of off doing their own thing, and, maybe Q comes to Picard or somebody comes to Picard and there's going to be a threat. And so Picard, with the help of Data and Geordi, has to get Riker on board, who's an admiral, and Troy, and, Beverly, and, Worf. It has to get them all together. Maybe that takes like a couple episodes. You're not dealing with the Enterprise here. Maybe, Picard's got like, just like a basic ship, like the Stargazer. Something that's like a rusted piece of garbage. Because he's not, he's sort of retired and not really in that much command anymore. Starfleet's passed him by. But no plot point about how Star Trek has turned into this fascist nightmare. Basically, they've moved on. That there's a new generation out there exploring the stars, and that Picard, he's retired, and so a lot of these people have retired. But the first couple episodes would be getting them together, and then this would be like, the end of episode 2 or the beginning of episode 3, where you see them all together again, and that's really the first season. Is them doing something together for like 10 episodes. Or maybe not 10 episodes, maybe just 5 episodes, maybe half the season. Or, most of the season. Because there's something that I really want to emphasize here. It's like you can go through this and look. I'm sure they'll copyright strike it. The point is not to just show this thing. But you have this moment where they all come together, and Picard sits in the chair, and, you got the nostalgia, and it's like, this shot, what a shot.
All systems online, Captain.
Like this. This is awesome. Like this right here. And that's what
Weapons
people
are ready, although they are limited.
Well, at least we got him. If we encounter the Borg, we're gonna need to run, shoot, or hide. So, Geordi, we'll need every bit of power you can get to those old shields. Make it so.
Aye, sir.
Mr. Data, set a direct course for Earth, maximum warp.
Aye, Captain. Course laid in, sir. She's ready.
Engage.
That right there, all of that stuff is so important. It's important because it pays homage to the original. It shows the respect that you have for the source material. But there's also something else important that you need to do. You can't just rely on this. But you can use this. You can use this to your advantage. So you have this moment, epic. People want it. People love to see it. You know. So the purpose of this is to establish a new series using the original. But here's something that I want to show you, because this is also important, and this should have been brought in season 1 or near the end of season 1.
But look at you. A chip off the old block.
Q. Is that right?
Simple name for a complicated being.
My father told me all about you. I thought you were dead.
Oh. And here I was hoping the next generation wouldn't think so linearly.
Young mortal, you have much ahead of you.
You told my father that humanity's trial was over.
It is, for him. But I'm here today because of you. You see, yours, Jack, has just begun.
That right there is brilliant. Okay, so let me explain. Having Picard and Beverly have a son, or even if it's not Beverly, Picard and somebody, having them have a son, you know, in the time that we haven't seen them, I think is very, very, very important. And by season 1, you can introduce this character who is an upcoming, very bright, very capable Starfleet officer. And the whole point of this is to pass this to a new generation. So, you know, you could call it Star Trek The New Generation. I mean, if you really wanted it to. The point here is that you pass the torch to the next character, which is this guy. You call him, you know, Jacques Picard, or, you know, Jack Picard. You know, this is the future. Now, you introduce the future with connecting it to the past, but unlike Star Wars, which did it in the worst way, which was by disrespecting all of the old characters and killing them off to make way for Rey, you do this one in a much more respectful way, and you build it up. That by the end of it, you'd have the new character and the old character working together to ultimately overcome something, and then that would lead into the new team, the new youth, being able to go on their own for season 2. And you can build something off of that to make something truly special. Unfortunately, these people today, they spent 3 seasons, almost, you know, basically 4 at this point. I don't think there's going to be another, I don't think there's going to be another season of this. But they spent the majority of the time on garbage, instead of doing what they should have done from the beginning, which was introduce the Enterprise D, have that nostalgia act, show Picard with the crew all together again, but then work towards making something new. Maybe there's a new threat coming in. Maybe, it's been all this time. Maybe the Romulans are still a threat. Maybe the Kelvin timeline doesn't play out exactly right, and the Romulans are still a threat, and Romulus still exists, or maybe it's a combination of things. The sky's the limit on what you can actually do. But this is so disappointing to me because season 3 had moments that were genuinely good that should have been there from the beginning. Now, I don't understand how people don't seem to understand this. You could have done this with Star Wars or any other franchise. You wanted Rey to be a beloved character? Well, first of all, you just have to get somebody who is not Kathleen Kennedy in charge. And that's a good start, but there are a million ways. Rey could have been Luke Skywalker's apprentice who spent the last number of years looking for him. Like, he trained her, and then suddenly he disappeared, and he left these clues, but Rey's been looking for him and hasn't been able to find him, and the piece of the puzzle is, maybe she stops to help Finn, and that leads her. It's like, there are things that you can do to mix the old and the new that will ultimately benefit both. Unfortunately, today we seem to have this idea that in order to make way for the new, we have to sacrifice the old. No, that's not true. That never works. And we see that in Ghostbusters or anything else. When you try to supplant the old material to make way for quote-unquote modernization, you kill the franchise dead in its tracks for multiple reasons. Number one, because the people working on these projects today are not nearly as talented or intelligent or creative or independent as people that came before. There are too many people that are reliant on a namesake rather than their own original idea and their own original concept. You have people today, I think that I was just looking at this on Twitter, you have people today like this guy, this pervert, who got a job working on the Powerpuff Girls because he wanted to put himself in the show in a relationship with a character that he liked. I mean, this guy is an absolute disgusting, degenerate lowlife. He's not bringing anything to the table. He's not creating anything new. This just him is porn, basically. This is his fetish. You can see this is a self-insert, and you have too many of these people that do this, that self-insert themselves, and they, in the process, they destroy the original character. They destroy the show. They alienate the fan base. But it's all for the narcissism of the people involved. And I think that this is a perfect example of how these fucking low IQ, bottom-feeding creeps, these beta males, these untalented, unqualified people that could never create something this popular in the first place, being allowed access to it, and then only by the end, once it's ruined, is there, for some reason, the opportunity to change. Now, Star Trek Picard changed. They added this stuff that people liked in the end. And most series wouldn't do that and haven't done that. Star Wars doubles down, brings back Rey. Rey Skywalker, she's not a Skywalker. No one thinks she's a Skywalker. No one treats her as a Skywalker. She's not a Skywalker. She's a Palpatine. It's just, there's so much here that angers me because of the potential. Because of what you have here. Because of the opportunity that you squandered. That's what gets me. You can say what you want about, they did the best they could. No. Going for this lowest common denominator bullshit to appease people on Twitter that will clap at anything like a bunch of fucking seals, that's not good enough. You should strive for more. There will always be morons and rejects on Twitter who will defend whatever garbage they're fed. They're drones. They're bots. They're not critical thinkers. They are people who say, let me consume product and then wait for next product. But this concept right here had all the potential in the world, and Star Trek Picard really should have been one season. It should have been one season that led to this. And then this is a new show, Star Trek, The New Generation. Having a whole new series based on these characters, based on a new threat, a new mission. And I'm not just talking about it's going to be about a villain. No, exploration. You know, the whole thing about Star Trek was that you're exploring the galaxy. You know, maybe you've made it into parts of the galaxy that we never could have imagined. And, you know, there's so much that you can do. Each episode could be its own thing with this overarching plot and story if you wanted. But it just seems that Star Trek has lost its identity. And in the end, they find it. But it's too late. There are 2 seasons of Star Trek Picard that didn't need to exist. And that's what absolutely kills me. It was terrible. It was indefensible. There's no excuse for it. None. And people in positions of authority should know that. They should have known not to do that. They should have known that creating stories that were that dark and that garbage, there was no redeeming factor to it. It's like, if you want to go dark for something, I understand. It's like the whole thing about like Picard and the Four Lights. That was a very dark episode. He was captured. He was tortured. You know, it's just like that whole thing was very, very dark. But there was a point to it. There was a message to it. In the end, it was about Picard's resilience. It was about him refusing to bend the knee, even though he was being told that that's the thing to do. Ironically enough, that is an episode that I think is important today, where you have people that are saying that they see 5 lights because they're being told to. You know, they're being pressured to. Yeah, they see 5. Oh, I see 5 lights, but there are 4 lights. I think that is so important. People today aren't even being tortured. They're just giving into it immediately, willingly. Giving into the cult, giving into the delusion, giving in to the ideology. And we see people like Will Wheaton, and you think, what the hell happened to that person? It's sad, almost. It's like, I don't hate Will Wheaton. I know a lot of people do. I just feel bad for him. I look at him and I go, that guy is miserable. He's mentally ill. He's demented. He's a freak. He lives in a perpetual state of anger and mistrust and delusion and stupidity. I don't know what the hell that guy went through, but it's like that sort of stuff is a major issue. And unfortunately, it makes its way into these shows, and then fans are subjected to the type of bullying and intimidation and harassment that we see that come from, you know, objecting to things like this. Now, I think the ending of this show was pretty good. But it should have been the beginning of the show. Star Trek Picard should have been a transition. And I'm not talking about the type of transitions that they like in San Francisco. I'm talking about transitioning from the next generation to the new generation. A new generation of Starfleet officers. You know, Captain Picard's son. You know, one of the youngest officers to be given, you know, a high ranking on a ship. Maybe, you know, you don't have to make him captain. You make him number 1, you know, for a season or so. And then he gets his own command. And, you know, people from the ship go with him. And it's about his journey and his growth. That would be interesting. And you can bring in, you know, parts of the old cast, because you will have established that their son was born way, way earlier. So you don't have to jump into the future. You don't have to go crazy. You can have the new generation be taking place right at the end of, you know, Picard's journey, really. And, you know, he's too old for this, but he's got one last mission in him. But to be honest, do you know what I would have done with Star Trek Picard? I wouldn't have had it be like this huge epic. I wouldn't have it be like the enemy is the Borg. What I would have had it be, honestly, I would have had it be a show that most people would find incredibly boring, probably. It would basically be Picard is retired. He's an ambassador. Starfleet is exploring, doing its own thing. And Picard would go back to planets that he visited in Star Trek The Next Generation. And you would see the evolution of those planets. And he would be tasked with, getting first contact and, greeting people that he's met before and, seeing how they've been doing. That's what I wanted from Star Trek Picard. Picard to be an ambassador, be an admiral, going from place to place, greeting old friends, encountering old enemies and seeing how they've evolved. That's what I wanted. Q along the way, giving him gruff, like, oh man, you're such an old guy now, and kind of razzing him in his old age, but nothing too crazy, just having some fun. That would have been an amazing thing if you had Star Trek Picard that was about Picard going back to places that he had been in Star Trek The Next Generation, but it's years later and he's an ambassador and things have sort of changed. It's Starfleet is roughly the same. Maybe a little bit different because of the Borg and stuff, but that's what I would want to see. Rekindling old relationships, not romantically, but like, he goes to a planet, it's like he met somebody there who was like him, and they've grown as a species. It's just like there's so much potential there, but unfortunately this is the best we get, and it's sad because it had so much more potential than this. And I'm not somebody that lets something pass because it's just kind of good. Okay. Anyway, that'll be it. I have a Rumble. You should definitely go and join. Fan Advocacy Network on Rumble. Every subscriber, every follower helps this number grow. We're 3 away from 30 followers. And I definitely appreciate it.